welcome back to Wisdom of Ages. I have Dr. Lazar with me today, and we are going to talk about the medical weight loss, and we'll go through a consultation with you to see what it would be like if you were to join our program. So, first and foremost, Dr. Lazar, are there any contraindications to medical weight loss drugs?
Okay, thanks for having me in the first place. There are a few. Perhaps the most important one is if you're a type 1 diabetic, you shouldn't take this because these drugs were originally made to help control sugar and they were found to have weight loss side effects, and that's why we're using those for that now. But if you're pregnant, you obviously should not be taking these things. There's some concern about if they were teratogenic or causing hypoglycemia during pregnancy. If you're breastfeeding and not if you're pregnant or might become pregnant. As a matter of fact, we recommend everybody who's taking these should be on birth control of some sort or get frequent pregnancy tests to make sure that we don't do anything bad along those lines. The final thing is the early studies in rodents showed an increase of thyroid cancer. So anyone with a history of thyroid cancer or a family history of thyroid cancer, we tend to avoid these just out of abundance of safety.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you don't meet any of that criteria, we could go ahead and probably think that you're a candidate for the weight loss drugs. And maybe I'll just describe how they work.
Sure.
So there's two medications. The first one is semaglutide. So that is a GLP-1 agonist. So this medication, semaglutide, works in two ways. It's a GLP-1 agonist. So one, it's slowing gastric emptying. So you're taking food in and you're not digesting it as quickly, making you feel more full and satiated. Therefore, less caloric intake. So that's not the only way it works though. It works by maintaining your blood sugars. So we want you to have a very steady blood sugar, and we don't want you to have a blood sugar spike and dip, because when you have a spike, insulin comes out to play, and when you have a whole lot of insulin, that basically stops all fat loss for the day because insulin stores your fat, and we want your body to be a fat burning machine. So we really want you to have a very steady blood sugar. That way the insulin is not spiking and coming out. So this medication does help with that. There are some side effects to the medication. However, because of the slowing of the gastric emptying, everything that slows down can have side effects such as bloating, nausea, vomiting. Not all of the time. It can happen in rare cases. And constipation, because everything that's slowing down, these are all the side effects of that happening. So on top of the GLP-1 agonist, there is another medication called tirzepatide. Now, how does that work compared to the semaglutide?
So it has the same GLP-1 effect. So the GLP-1s are peptides that act like hormones. So it's a natural product that your body makes, and so we are augmenting something your body already makes by providing another version of that, right? So that's why your body doesn't stop making its own. So if we were to stop the medication, you just go back to your old level. Tirzepatide added a GIP, a gastrointestinal peptide, to the GLP-1, which helps monitor the blood sugar even more. And so both of them act on the brain to say that you're full. And they both slow gastric emptying, but you can get a 20% weight loss with tirzepatide, where the average weight loss for the semaglutide, which is the one that's just the pure GLP-1, that's only about 17% or so.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned that the blood sugar stability was one of the ways that you lose weight, and that's absolutely true. The caloric deficit is probably the most important part, which is why you lose some muscle mass at the same time as you lose some fat, because you're really cutting your calories back a lot. But the medical benefits of the insulin regulation and the blood sugar regulation are part of the reason why I became so interested in this in the first place, because there's long-standing cardiac benefits from being in this medications. It helps with the blood vessels staying pliable and not progressing disease. And there's increasing evidence that anyone with cardiac disease of any kind and some comorbidities will benefit from being on these medications long term.
Very good. That's impressive. A lot of people are benefiting from these medications. So you did mention, though, the caloric deficit and the potential to lose muscle mass. So I do want to touch on that briefly because it is very important. So when you're on this medication, you of course are taking in less caloric intake, but we need to make sure that you're hitting your protein goals, because we don't want you to lose muscle mass. So as it is already, when you hit the age of 30, you lose about 10% of your muscle mass per decade, unless you're doing something about it, unless you're eating adequate protein, and unless you're doing some sort of weight resistance training to promote muscle mass. So on top of that, we need to make sure that you're hitting your protein goals. So we aim for a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So if you are, for example, 200 pounds, but you want to weigh 150 pounds, that would be your protein goal for the day, is 150 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always easy to hit starting off, but we certainly recommend that to maintain your muscle mass.
Yep. So protein shakes are relatively important with this. Medicine's going to make you feel like you're not hungry. And so you still need to actively maintain your protein levels. And so often we recommend a protein shake in the morning just to get your day started. That first meal of the day being protein rich seems to have some lifelong benefits, and it changes the way you metabolically process food throughout the rest of the day, no matter what your other meals are.
Yeah, so on top of protein, it's really important to get your fiber in as well, because as we discussed previously, this has the potential to cause constipation, and getting adequate amounts of fiber will help prevent that. So I always recommend, if when you're eating your meal, to eat your protein first, your vegetable second, and your carb last. And that's going to help you fill up on what you need and not on what you don't need, such as carbs. Now you do need a little bit of carbs, but at this point, most people are eating empty carbs, which is not really necessarily what we need.
So these are expensive. I mean, these are medications that are not cheap. It is part of a whole process to lose weight. So most folks can't just diet and exercise alone. They've tried and it fails. So the addition of these medications to lifestyle changes and exercise and meal choices are what's going to make a long-lasting difference. Without the medications, a lot of folks have failed. With the medications, the ones we've treated, we've seen significant weight changes and long-term modifications of body habits. You feel better about yourself. You have more ability to exercise. You see the changes happen a lot quicker. For most folks that are doing this, the weight loss has been sustained. Not just while you're on the medication.
So I do have people asking, if they stop the medication, are they going to gain the weight back? Now, on top of eating clean, right, we need to make proper food choices, because the way that the government does not regulate our food, there's a lot of ultra processed food out there, and to make these choices is actually really important. Your body has to detox all of the stuff that you're putting into it, and if it's just detoxing all day long, it doesn't have the time and energy to start burning fat, which is what we need. So eating clean is number one. Now, in terms of maintaining your weight, if you want to get off this medication, are there any strategies that we can use to make that happen?
So off the medication forever, certainly a possibility. Then you go back to your body's natural level of GLP-1 type hormones in your body, so you'll get that urge to eat back again unless you've made the choices the right way. And so it takes about 2 weeks to change a habit. And so once you've been on this for a long time and you get used to new sized portions, it should be easier to keep the weight off. We'll see most of the folks that put on it don't want to come off it completely because they've seen such good results and they're afraid to go back to the way they were before. And so we've had very few folks stop it completely, but you can certainly taper down to a maintenance dose, which is a much lower amount, just to help you along a little bit.
Yeah, so what that would look like is probably maybe starting every other week having an injection instead of every week, and then we can back it down to every third and maybe just once a month. If you're doing well with that, maintaining your diet and exercise, we can even go to what's called microdosing. So we can back off on the amount of medication that you're getting to just minimal amounts, and it's still going to provide you all the benefits of weight loss plus the cardiovascular health that you had mentioned previously.
There's also, some of the compounding pharmacies we work with are developing oral versions of these medications that may be useful for maintenance, so you don't have to get the injections anymore going forward. Not a lot of data on how that's going to work for weight loss, but I would think as a maintenance plan, taking a pill every once in a while is probably going to be better than having to come in and get a shot.
Yeah, that would be awesome. On top of that, there are probiotics out there that help promote the natural GLP-1 in your body. So there's ways to do that by eating and increasing your protein and fiber and things like that. But then there's a probiotic that you can take that actually promotes the GLP-1 in your body to form naturally. So it's going to have those satiating effects that the injection does. So there are possibilities to coming off the medication and still maintaining your weight. Now, on top of that, we do want to dig down as to why you are gaining weight to begin with and why you're having trouble keeping it off. So is it simply you have a lousy diet, lousy exercise habit? That could be it. Is that most of us? Probably, I'll admit that. But there are some times when you have hormonal imbalances. So things like your thyroid, number one. We want to check your thyroid completely. And it's not just checking a TSH, not to get technical, but sometimes a lot of docs will check that number, say that it's normal, and say that your thyroid's great. But there's actually a lot more to it that you can check out to make sure that your thyroid's running properly and optimized. Another thing would be your sex hormones. So your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone. If you don't have adequate levels of these and they're not balanced completely, they're going to fight you in every way to lose weight. So you could be doing everything perfectly, having a diet, having a healthy lifestyle, and still having trouble dropping the weight because your hormones are out of balance. And lastly would be your cortisol. So that is your fight or flight hormone, right? If you have a lot of stress, which most of us do, your body has a hard time dropping weight when it feels like it's in fight or flight mode all of the time. So the goal to losing weight and dropping weight is your body needs to feel safe and satiated. So if you have a ton of stress, a ton of cortisol, that's fighting against you. And if you're not eating adequate amounts of protein, for example, you can eat a whole pizza and feel completely full, but your body actually didn't receive any nutritional value. So it's going to hang on to all of that, thinking that it's not getting any food, where in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm eating a ton. So, there's little tweaks that you can make to your diet. And then of course, checking out your hormones to see if there's anything going on that we can correct that would help you on your weight loss journey.
Yeah, and starting this, it's really important that you're seeing a healthcare provider. You need to have your labs checked before you start these kind of medications to make sure that your baseline levels are where they're supposed to be. And we need to look for changes because any medicine you take can cause harm to your body. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. You can get things like pancreatitis, and you can get, any of the other side effects of slowing your digestion down. So we have to be careful about these things, and we have to monitor them over time. We don't want your weight loss to be too significant too quickly, no more than 2 pounds a week, because then you lose too much of your muscle mass. And so it really is water, exercise, sleep, and these medications as the whole package. You can't do just one.
Yeah. Now, just to touch on the pancreatitis, the bowel obstruction briefly, how common is that? Are you seeing that a lot? Or when are the instances that this may happen?
So if you're having abdominal pain, you need to get checked for pancreatitis. We have not seen it much at all. I mean, we start our doses relatively small to make sure that your body can handle the medication. The side effects that we've seen mostly are nausea and indigestion, and just sort of a food resistance. So people don't want to eat because they always feel full and they feel like they're bloated. Other than that, we had very few side effects.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I hope this clarifies some things for you, and this is something to look forward to if you were to join our program. This is what we would ask of you, and these are the types of studies that we would want to get.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure.